Welcome to this video on the themes of Blood Brothers. So I'm just going to kind of give a brief overview of them first. So the kind of central themes as I see them. Number one, obviously class, and in there we can think about social inequality. Two, we can think about fate, and in there sort of superstition. Three, we can think about sort of nature versus nurture and obviously the environments that people are in. I guess women and the roles that they play, their roles in society. We can think about obviously education, and the kind of divided nature of that. And we can also think about sort of violence, and in turns inequality. Now, the next thing to think about with each theme is the message that is being sent. So through class, obviously what Ross was trying to say is that the class system controls and restricts people's lives, okay? And we see that specifically through the juxtaposition of Mickey, his life, and Edward, okay? That's the perfect distillation of this idea. They both come essentially from the same place, but they have very different lives, and therefore they have very different outcomes. Now, in terms of fate and superstition, well, this obviously links it nicely to the genre of the play, the tragedy, because of course, wrapped up in all tragedies is this sense of inevitability, okay, that you cannot escape, the confines of the play, reflective of the fact that you cannot escape the confines of society. And that's really what it is. It's saying that, again, in many ways, it links, I guess, to class. The class system destines people to certain outcomes, okay? You might look, for example, at even sort of, let's say, someone like Mrs. Johnston, having to kind of work full time compared with, Mrs. Lyons, who obviously stays at home. But of course, the play has a lot of other examples of fate. For example, the foreshadowing of the guns as seen through Sammy's sort of play as a younger boy. Nature versus nurture. Now, this is obviously a big kind of philosophical concept. For example, are we born evil or are we made evil? It's a philosophical debate. But really, again, so much of this play comes back to our two protagonists, Mickey and Edward. Because they're twins, the implication is that they start the same. And so what Willie Russell is saying is that nurture is the ultimate driver for their outcomes. We do see some examples of how they are very similar. For example, at school, they both get suspended, arguably for the same thing, which is defiance, kind of talking back to their teachers. But it's nurture that ensures that as they continue their lives, Edward continues to have success and Mickey continues to struggle. In terms of women, well, we have two key women, don't we? We have Mrs. Johnston. Well, I guess three. Mrs. Johnston, and in brackets, Mrs. Lyons, who both play the role of mother. And really, in that, they both just want to protect their children in their own way. Obviously, Mrs. Lyons does this through a kind of manipulation. But ultimately, the message is, women bear the brunt of societal inequality. The men are very much absent in the play in that respect. We might also think as well about Linda and the way that her destiny, of course, to become a mother, but ultimately to suffer, the loss of her husband, Mickey. The message that's being sent about education, very similar to this, the education system lays the foundation of inequality. Okay, that's what lays the foundation of inequality. And you see this no better than in Mickey and Edward's school. Mickey's school, secondary modern, it's chaos. It's chaos. Edward's school, the grammar, and teachers who talk to him about going to Oxford or Cambridge, the sense of expectation is way, way higher. And last but not least, we have violence, and that's really the class system. I mean, a lot of it comes back in this play to class. That's why it was the first one I wrote down. The class system ensures that violence remains. And the reason it remains is because of desperation. That's why these people turn to violence in the end. You look, of course, at Sammy and Mickey. The reason they turn to violence is because of their circumstances. And that, my friends, are the themes of Blood Brothers.